A very good morning. Welcome for those that are just joining us here on Morning at NTV. I'm Chris Higenyi. You are joining us at the Kickstarter segment, and it's just about 23 minutes to the top of the hour of 8 o'clock. I have a gentleman here, political commentators, a member of parliament from the governing National Resistance Movement, who, like the party, is still smarting from the latest caucus meeting that had a staggering 24 resolutions that were reached. The National Resistance Movement continues to give us resolution after resolution. The latest is a set of controversial ones that also some people within the party are saying will infringe on the rights of individual members of parliament to put forward private members' bill. That will be put into context. But before we go, or rather before I introduce my guests, just a preamble, the NRM members of parliament concluded a 10-day retreat at the National Leadership Institute in Kyankwanzi under the theme, Increasing Household Incomes and Wealth Creation, the Critical Role of a Leader. As NRM strengthens its agenda ahead of 2026, MPs should provide confidence to Ugandans that indeed its policies are delivering the intended objectives of socio-economic transformation, patriotism, Pan-Africanism, and sustained democracy. And in a world being battered by hard economic trends, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, voters everywhere are skeptical of the ability of politics and politicians to act on interests that are for all. Alex Brandon Kintu is Member of Parliament for Kagoma and NRM leaning. I'm also joined by Jonathan Tabalanga, political analyst, as well as political commentator and UPC stalwart, Joseph Ochieno. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here. I'd like to begin with a Member of Parliament from Kagoma who is also a leaning NRM.
No, I'm not leaning.
You are mainstream.
Exactly.
Member of Parliament.
Leaning would be underestimating.
Will be underestimating.
Exactly.
All right. My apologies for that, and thanks for the correction. Just take us through 24 staggering resolutions that were made at the end of the latest caucus of the National Resistance Movement Party, which is the governing party.
Good morning again. Well, I feel uncomfortable with the word staggering because it's simply very simple English, but it contradicts with the listeners.
Yeah.
Those resolutions,
24 resolutions.
Those resolutions are not staggering.
That's a whole huge number.
I will inform you. I will inform you because I was there and I was part of this resolution.
Okay.
I am Brandon Alex Kintu. I'm a member of parliament from Kagoma North constituency, but I'm also the spokesperson of the NRM Parliamentary Caucus. So I'm not leaning. I am going to give you facts with a very informed view.
Thank you.
We had 10 days off from our recess. I would like first to thank the members of parliament because taking off your 10 days of recess, we were supposed to be in our constituencies of families, but we went to Kyankwanzi. But I'm also aware that while we're in Kyankwanzi, some people also took off a few days to wine and dine in Munyonyo for a high-level kind of caucusing. The NRM Parliamentary Caucus has a constitution, and we do have, and we are mandated within our constitution to have these periodically caucusing. Like any other party, I believe UPC does caucus, NUP does caucus, and all others. So we're simply doing our routine caucusing. But remember, Chris, we've just had recently manifesto time. We have been reflecting on the manifesto for about 2 weeks and where we have gone in these 2.5 years. We have a contract with Ugandans as NRM. We promised people that in 5 years we shall lead you somewhere. So it was also very important that we can reflect on the manifesto. Where have we put the priorities? Where do we need? I was just having a light chat with him and he says his weight because of the NRM. I don't remember the word he used. And then in my heart I was asking, did the NRM communicate to heavens to make these rains or what? I did not catch up right, but I left it to that point. So we have a contract with Ugandans that we must reflect. Now, these members of parliament belong to the National Party. We have lots of things to explain because we also put up, in the manifesto, we put up lots of promises. But as any other country that is grappling economically, we may not have met in the 2 years, but we still have 3 years to go. Yes. So we needed this reflection of 10 days, and it would be very wrong because those 25 and beyond were real, these were concerns of the people. And these are ideas. What is our role as members of parliament? Legislation. So if somebody comes up with something, we really have to put it right. So I wouldn't say, I'll be waiting to highlight on your area of interest, because these are now public documents. People may be interpreting them differently, but this has all been done in the right interest of Ugandans, and this has been done because we have continuity. People will actively bash them, they will put in political activism because that's the trend in Uganda, that's politics always. And they don't have any contract with Ugandans for now, but we shall work. So we brought up those resolutions, not in our own interest. Remember, members of parliament, we have a very large population. We have programs of government that are running. We want to reinforce, we want to re-empower, we want to put priorities to the needs of the people. I know later there, when we will talk about it, one of the strongest resolutions we talked about to empower and also support the parish development model. But somebody will look at it, support. Somebody yesterday was asking me, yeah, as parliament you did the debate on this, but then you have to take 10 days to go to Kyankwanzi and talk about it. I reminded him that Christ, every day we go to churches. Even this morning I had a 6 o'clock mass. But luckily it was raining. But when you reach at the roundabout, you find somebody with a Bible telling you Jesus loves you. You'll be like, hey, does this guy know that I'm from the church? So we have to put continuity. We have to.
Interesting, yeah.
We shouldn't give up, because this is entirely responsibility, and this is our country.
Okay.
So those resolutions are not staggering. These are serious resolutions. I had somebody was saying now from the 10 points program, we can even make 90. When you're at war, you must use so many ways to attack. I'm saying we're at a war of poverty. We have poverty in Uganda, so we must really entrench it. We must really make sure that we have to find a way to end this war. That's why we have programs that are rolling down to the villages.
All right. Joseph Ochieno.
Yeah.
The Honorable MP made mention of something that skipped his mind about the rain today and your attribution to the National Resistance Movement. Before you tell us exactly what you told him, I must inform you that there was a government official one day who advised farmers across the country to take advantage of the rains under the NRM government.
I have absolutely no problem with rains under NRM, except when it rains under NRM, things stop. I was on a global television the other day attempting to sell the Republic of Uganda in the interest of everybody else, including NRM and their big guy, Mr. Museveni. And there was just a bit of a wind. And I live in a relatively okay area of Kampala. And boop, power went off. So NRM rain, even if it drizzles, it sinks. But the point that I actually raised, and I think I have to make it very clear, is that there's some road works taking place. Part of that road was thanks to some of our noises being made. And the road gets blocked. Contractors whom we pay billions of Ugandan shillings, our money, have got no thought to either give alternative route. Some car fell on the ditch the other day very riskily. Part closed. Yesterday we passed a particular area. As of today, there was a lady at as early as I think 6:15, a car stuck on the side of the road, very dangerous open space. Anything could happen considering the insecurity under NRA. Then another vehicle comes, passes, one comes, fails. Mine, relatively new, decent car, but like Betty Camille, like Betty Camille says, my beautiful sister, my car is smaller, unlike the NRA public paid VS cars. It stops and I retreat. So it means I had to go back, had to remove my shoes, and I had to take a border all the way to here. This is important, that these are the big issues that this country needs to be discussing. And these are the big issues that very well-paid NRA legislators and all other legislators ought to be discussing. I actually noticed they did not talk about infrastructure. I noticed they did not talk about big things like education. I noticed they did not talk about big things like security, including the fact that our men and women died in Somalia. They did not even talk about the review of whether or not we need to review our position vis-a-vis the deployment in Somalia, let alone the fact that there was insufficient consultation, if any, on these matters. And I come into this space, and you're absolutely right. 24 resolutions are not bad, but what are the contents of those 24 resolutions. And of course, yes, if it is the case that we are talking about programs, we could make them 90. Do you know, under UPC 1, we only had one war, and it was about three things, you know, the fight against ignorance, poverty, and disease. And you know what? Ignorance, education. Poverty, agriculture and economics. You know, disease, health services. The other day I was coming from Western Uganda and I was in Kagadi, and I met an old man who, for late 80s, he was proud to say that, yes, when Kagadi Hospital was being commissioned, you know, he was there, and he was also part of the visiting guys who went around with flowers and crops, enabling kind of stuff. And the then member of parliament of the 80s, whom I was pleased and lucky to meet, told me of, you know, those roads, Joseph, those roads were supposed to have been done in 1986 as part of our programs. Anyway, they came 40 years late, but it's simply because of the oil. Granted, the roads are there and fine. Okay. These are the big national things we should be talking about.
You are faulting the caucus for not attempting to address the critical issues of the day, and instead getting down to working on the furnishings within its own living room.
To the extent that they even go ahead, and I can see there, you know, one of the most basic principles of democracy is that legislators, members of parliament, yes, they get whipped by political parties. They mentioned political parties.
We shall be getting to that.
But they've got very specific roles and responsibilities and a sense of conscience. And it's extraordinary, the key things that these guys actually went and emphasized. As I said, it was extraordinary. But a quick point here at the beginning, and maybe back to my good brother here. Yeah. I hope that in the event that I become president of UPC very soon, that I'm able to go and caucus in Kyankwanzi as a public institution.
Campaigns
and then
are not
whether or not, no, it's not about campaigns, very important point for Ugandans. And whether or not when we go to Kyankwanzi, how much we pay rent or accommodation for those facilities, because it's a public facility. That's one of the things that I'll be very interested to know.
All right. Jonathan Tabalanga, you can expect these two to go at each other, NRM and then the workings of the UPC. But
you see they're in bed with each other.
That's a different thing altogether. Right now, an overview that is independent of the extreme, you know, taking of sides on the part of the government and the opposition in this setting right now. When you look at the caucus, when the caucus of the National Resistance Movement sits, does it discuss as a state entity or as a party working, you know, group?
First of all, what caucusing happens within party structures, within the umbrella of parties. So you cannot say that, of course, the agenda, like he says, they have a social contract they signed with the people. After every 5 years, they go back to the public.
The parties in administration.
And they ask for another mandate.
That's right.
Which they have now, and I think it ends in 2026, 2026, 2025? 2026. So they have a constitution as a party, and it says that every period of time they will go back to Kyankwanzi to reflect on issues that either they've achieved certain things or they've not achieved certain things. So I do not want to fault NRM for going to Kyankwanzi. It is within their own right. It is their constitution, and they have to go and discuss these national issues. Now, whatever they discuss can indirectly affect us as citizens, or in different ways, negatively or positively. Of course,
why do you choose to use the word indirectly when you have the option of directly? Because this is a party that is in administration.
No.
The decisions made are going to directly affect the implementation of policy.
You know, like Mr. Joseph is saying here, that they discuss things, they did not talk about education, they did not talk about health, they did not talk about... I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what they actually had.
No, resolutions.
But I know for a fact that they had a discussion about security, and the president had serious discussions and even castigated his own officers for corruption. This is a fact. So I don't want to go that route of criticizing them for not discussing about certain issues. But my point is, when I talk about directly or indirectly, I am talking about the fact that people in UPC, people in NUP, people in DP would not be comfortable with some of the resolutions and the decisions that are made in Kyankwanzi. NRM is not making decisions for a NUP or for NRM. They're strategizing, because politics is about interest. It is about capturing the next seat. Because you see, Mr. Brandon here actually comes from my constituency. He's not going to sit here and plan for the rival. He's planning for the next election and he wants to win. So for UPC and for NUP also, and UPC and the others, they're also doing their own internal caucusing. Yeah. So I expect NRM also to go and see what are these guys talking about. Let's understand how the National Resistance Movement uses the advantage of being the governing party. The ability to, first and foremost, attend to the furnishings within its own living room, but ensure that the lobby within, for example, the hotel is also taken care of. When you discuss and come up with resolutions tagged entirely to aspects including the PDM that has been exclusively NRMized, you know, at what point does national interest take on away from party issues? Because at the end of the day, you're the party in administration. Honorable.
Oh, that's for me. I thought you were still submitting. Well, I have a very great interest when we try to interact with such good brains in this country, because at the end of the day, you are Ugandan before you become NRM or NUP or independent or UPC. Like he ably says, there are certain things we are not going to come out and resolve. You know, when you talk about security, you don't talk about issues of buying lipstick or deodorant or biscuit. No, we're not going to come and give you resolutions. We discuss, hey guys, look here, we talked about security, we're going to do ABCD. I sit on the, like Joseph says, I sit on the Committee of Defense and Internal Affairs in Parliament. I have been to Somalia. We extensively, we even paid tribute to our gallant men and women that died. But we are not going to come out. Like he says, we are in power. We need to consolidate. Not consolidating into enslaving people, but in a nice way as government. We also talked about, these are resolutions. I don't know how the interpretation of resolutions mean. When I was in the seminary wanting to become a priest, I was in charge of liturgy. So I would sometimes help my parish priest. Okay. If he remembers, we have a parish called Kagoma. Yes. To at least summarize the homily of Father Helfer. But I would not go into details. You know, we had baptism in one Simba sub-center and then we collected this. So I would just summarize the homily that would be appropriate in readings of that Sunday. So we discussed a lot, because 10 days we did not even discuss those things. We even, I will disclose this because I'm in charge of information of the caucus. We also had issues to do with coffee, we had issues of ATIAC, and we invited these guys to come. But that is not being talked about because we still have a debate to go on, but we did this all in the interest of the people. So as a caucus, like he rightly says, we have interest because we are mandated. Their interest is to kick us out of power. Yeah. But our interest is to continue it because we've been elected every after. I have not been here longer than Joseph. He has a very rich experience in politics. But I also I don't have a plan of dying tomorrow. Last time I remember I mentioned it and you said, no, you shouldn't. But I shouldn't wish death. So I know I still have to stay here longer and maybe probably have a great break with this country. So when does the party and the national interest come into? Of course, this is the party in power, Chris. This is the party in power, and no one is going to ask. They will not ask the Josephs. Now, when Joseph his car gets hit, he will not even talk about, these people will definitely rush to NRM. When you reach there, you just rush to NRM. So we have responsibility, we have answers, we have questions ahead of us. So we must answer this. We talked about infrastructure. As a country, as government, recently we had KCCA, they came to Parliament, we appropriated them money. But we have also to continue. Kampala here has so many members of Parliament from the opposition. How much are we doing oversight? But somebody quickly ran to NRM. We have the administration of Kampala purely in the hands of opposition, but they quickly ran to NRM. So the party has to work so hard to make sure that the interest, since they have the contract for the people, they have to make sure these needs are met. Joseph raised a very nice thing. Sir, you are very welcome in Kyankwanzi. Even if you have, as UPC, if you have a literate tomorrow, you can go. Because the process is very clear. You can apply. We pay for those facilities. Let me give you information. And in Nari, has a right to tell you, sorry, these days we are occupied. Yesterday we were kicked out. They told us we have to leave this place by 9.
After 10
because
days.
10 o'clock, we have another team that is coming. After 10 days that we paid for to use the facility. So as a National Leadership Institute, it's not an NRM institute. And when we are there, we are not NRMizing issues, but we are legislators who are concerned with the issues. And I want to bring it to your notes that there are issues that we disagreed on in the caucus.
Reading the resolutions as presented here, the 24, I would like to excuse the word staggering from it.
Thank you.
But at a certain point, I'm trying to look for, because most of the resolutions here are predominantly NRM, you know. When you look at, for example, election of commissioners of parliament, that can look at the wider aspect within the parliament itself, review of NRM government performance,
Yes.
of first and second sessions of the 11th parliament, midterm review of the manifesto implementation,
Exactly.
presentations on giving members the party whip, the revisiting of lawmaking processes and the role of the individual party. This show is not going to communicate the resolutions as they were outed by the National Resistance Movement. Allow me ask Jonathan Tabalanga and leave Joseph Ochieno to cool down.
I am a calm guy. I also nearly went to the seminary. So
All
for
right.
me, I'm driven by faith organization.
Cool
and-
down.
yeah.
Yes. The president spoke about leaders being central to implementation of government programs, but most importantly, realization of the aspirations of socio-economic transformation. The president often seems to have this feeling that the leaders are not doing enough. In other words, he has a blueprint of leadership that he wants to see, both within the NRM and outside, that is within opposition. So as an MP, whether you belong to NUP, DP, or NRM, the president wants to see the leadership aspect at community level to be able to bring about the transformation. But he's also seemingly resigned to the fact that the kind of aspirations that engulfed NRA in the 1980s, in the run-up to 1986, are no longer there. I don't know whether you've had a chance to listen to a gentleman called Mafabi. Mafabi is periodically brought to lecture politicians.
David,
on,
you mean?
David Mafabi, to lecture, and this one I must say it very emphatically, to lecture politicians on the ideal NRA issues. And he was there talking to them. Do you see this being achieved? Because if the president thinks that the leaders are not doing the job they're supposed to be doing, these are the leaders he has as his team, these are the leaders we have. Do we stand a chance in getting the kind of leadership that we expect?
First of all, the president clearly in his submissions, it looks like he's very disappointed with some of the leadership and with some of the institutions that are presiding over certain projects within this country. One of the things he's always talking about is corruption. And in a democracy, if corruption is endemic, the other principles of democracy, accountability, responsibility, rule of law, they cannot actually come out. Because rule of law and corruption, if there is corruption, it means there is absence of rule of law. Because if there is rule of law, then there will be no corruption. Okay? So the president has appointed a number of people in different positions. And these people have not delivered. And that is, he has already said it. Now, in terms of delivering from the, if you look at the original 9-point program, the 10-point program, when Seven took over, he had a very good vision for the country. But of course, I think mid-90s, 80s, when the constitution was, this 1995 constitution was being debated, he was bulldozed by his colleagues. And they started asking for, you know, give me this if you want this. Give me this.
Say it.
And that was, I think, the problem. But I think, you see, when you surround yourself, because the president does not get the information he needs.
Why?
He depends on
because you see,
various people.
as a president, you trust Mr. Brandon here, and you trust Mr. Joseph here, And if Joseph and Brandon connive not to give the president information, who will give the president information? It's common knowledge. The president, you remember during COVID, he was very, very surprised by some of the things he was watching on TV because he had time to sit home and watch TV himself. So I am saying the president does not receive enough information in relation to the things that must be done in this country. The intelligence is lacking. And you remember when the Somalia issue, he was surprised that instead of taking combat-ready soldiers, they were taking people because of, technical know-who. And he didn't know this. It is because there was a problem that he discovered that there was an issue in terms of recruitment.
Allow Ochieno to interject on that.
No.
Finish it up.
So what I'm saying is transformation of the country. You see, it has taken a long time. And these problems will come up, especially, for me, people can talk about other things, education, but when there is corruption, there is no education. When there is corruption, security has problems. When there is corruption, there is no rule of law. When there is corruption, and this rotates around corruption. Even the roads he's talking about. You know very well there's been a debate in Parliament about the kilometer. How much do you pay for a kilometer of road? But have the guys in Parliament addressed it? Of course not. Museveni cannot come to Parliament and legislate.
According to
the CEO.
According to the MP, it was discussed, but the resolution didn't capture that.
No.
Joseph Ochieno.
No, I think we have a problem in this country. We need to hit the thing on the head. The problem in this country is the national leadership. But number one, Mr. Museveni was not elected into power. Mr. Museveni fought his way through to power and went into State House by force. Mr. Museveni controlled state power for 10 years uninterrupted. Semugero only just about attempted. Monolithic, 10 years, 1986 to 1996. From 1996 up to the year 2006, political parties had been banned. So NRA has had 20 years in which Mr. Museveni had a full control of the republic.
He would say successive elections have redeemed him.
Which is an absolute nonsense if you look into the details of the whole thing. But let me just qualify this very particular point here. Mr. Museveni, who is a very experienced guy, worked in president's office as a paper person, in 1970, must have had a privilege. What was such a fantastic guy to learn lessons of administration and management. This guy went to the bush, managed to form his own thing. No, I'm making an important point here.
All right.
Then fast forward, works with the military commission. They are part of the liberation movement that got rid of Idi Amin. To say today, 40 years on, that this guy has got no clue what's going on. No, you're fighting. The problem in this country is from the top. And Dr. Bote said, the fish rots from the top. It's actually Mr. Museveni. Brandon here is a fantastic young man and is a good friend of mine. Starting from today, we're going to have many conversations about the future of the Republic of Uganda across the realities of Uganda.
I'm glad to be a friendship enabler.
But NRA as a political organization led by Mr. Museveni is an absolutely fudged thing. To suggest that Mr. Museveni doesn't know what's going on. For me, I am a leader in Uganda People's Congress today, even without the office of Uganda House. I don't really think anybody can say that there's anything happening in any of the 15 sub-regions in Uganda, for which by and large I don't have an idea. So it would be very worrying that Mr. Museveni does not know what's going on in Somalia and how these things are done. No, it's part of the system that feeds him. To know that Mr. Museveni does not know about corruption is a nonsense. And to know, for example, that the other day Mr. Museveni's son just wakes up to realize that the port was in Kampala, it's a nonsense. These guys know what's going on. There is just no will. And in many cases, they just don't have a clue how to manage the big challenges. The Republic of Uganda, after 40 years, is now possibly too big, too sophisticated for Mr. Museveni's economics and political science thing of that time to sort of mean and manage. At the moment, if you see what happened in the caucus, and that is basically part of my concerns, Brandon. If you look at Museveni's immediate reactions to Somalia, it was sort of to blame soldiers, call them like, they panicked. If you see his final thing for which he now says, okay, they were resilient, he blames two poor majors, So when does Mr. Museveni take responsibility? And finally, on the question of corruption, as your resolutions as legislators, you needed to have a paragraph to say, look, we have concern and we note with the families this what happened, whatever. Contextualize it together as a matter of a public provision for that. Yes, We all caucus as political organizations. Chris, look through Dr. Bote's last parliamentary caucus meeting of UPC 1984. You will see how you deal with the UPC questions. You deal with the possibilities of the next coming elections, but you see the burden of national responsibility. That sort of is how I am looking at this, including what are the priorities. But of course, yes, including when you're a governing political party, you've got a burden of leadership and responsibility for all. But politicking, actually,
very quickly,
politicking comes much more really. It should actually not even be seen that you're politicking for votes. In a democracy, it's not. But of course, are we in a democracy? Of course not.
Jonathan, you have 2 minutes. I need to go to the Honourable Member of Parliament for something very critical.
When we look at, I think he speaks so much about Obote. But one of the reasons why M7 went to the bush was because of Obote rigged elections.
Obote did not rig elections.
No,
I'll not allow it to get.
He said,
Obote did not rig elections, and there is no
Joseph,
evidence Obote rigged elections. Obote did not.
I believe
himself has said Obote did not rig elections.
Ochieno,
they went for a different reason.
Jonathan Tabalanga says President Yoweri Museveni claimed. So whether Obote didn't rig
it's
or
an
rigged,
he's
quoting the president. He's quoting Museveni.
And you see even people from the DP, because it is the party that was rigged.
All right.
They agree.
DP lost those elections.
Joseph, let him submit.
Let him submit. True, Obote rigged the elections. So the problem starts with your president.
Let me shift away.
No, my president is the last president of the Republic of Uganda. The only elected president in this country. DP lost the elections, and as a way of going forward, Brandon,
Joseph Ochieno,
our conversation is to make sure that we neutralize that.
Excuse me, gentlemen. I don't want this discussion to go into any other space that we do not factor this morning. We are talking about the caucus. Now, whether Obote did whatever he did, that's a different question. Let me come to the Honourable Member of Parliament and ask why, as the spokesperson, the resolutions are out. Ugandans have concerns that are aching. The economic hardships at the time, people are struggling to put bread on the table. People are struggling to find work that is meaningful. People are struggling to make ends meet. Why would a party that is governing choose to come and gloss over patriotism building, national strategic imperative, a person who is grappling with a lack of essentials in the household has very little time to begin thinking about patriotism?
We have already answered that by providing a program that is called parish development model. We want to have household income. We have answered the question. We have been having so many programs from the administration, and then you have these CDOs, community development officers. So a lot of money has been spent on administration in the district. We are now saying as government, as the party, let us go down. So if you have something to eat and to sell in the market, then you'll think. So we have a solution for that. And we are saying, we are very much aware that my parish in Buenge called Kagaire, it has different dynamics to a parish here in Arua Park or some parish in Nigeria or Wakiso, the population, the geographical location, and the kinds of businesses that are done. We are going to address that. So we have answered you. For you to think that government is not concerned about the level of unemployment, Uganda is a private sector-led country now. It's a private sector-led country. I'm only getting worried because there is this other economic activity called politics that grows every day, because every day we are into politics. So we have answered that. But also when you talk about patriotism, it's something we may think by pronouncing it.
No, I didn't question patriotism.
Yeah, but I say, why would we? We have to emphasize it, because Jonathan here talked about that when there is corruption in the country. Indeed, I agree. Do you think there is an administration in Kampala? Do you think Parliament or City Council doesn't allocate and appropriate money? But what helps for Ugandan? He will do a very short work. The other day, I live somewhere close to me.
Very quickly.
I was driving yesterday in the night. Then I saw in some squares that are designed, those potholes that are dug in a very nice way in Kampala, and they are left there for weeks. And somebody will go and give accountability. But this is a Ugandan who loves the country, but he only cares about money. So we have to remind people, patriotism, you have to love your country. I have I have lived somewhere elsewhere where it's a responsibility of that citizen to pay taxes.
Can you just give us a bit of detail on what the party is going to do on Resolution 17, which is anti-corruption struggle? What we have here is that members warmly welcome the presentations on the subject delivered by Brigadier General Henry Isoke and Lieutenant Colonel Emi Katabazi. Members commit to relentlessly fighting corruption wherever it may manifest and to maximally support all institutions involved in the fight against corruption. These are good words, but
they are not only good words.
What is the action?
The action is not going to be reflected in the reading, but we are going to act. First of all,
how?
What are the mandates of Parliament?
What have you agreed on to act?
We make laws. And you know, corruption has different circles here in Uganda, and we also have champions of corruption. We are not going. We are not going to come
yes,
here.
We
are not going to come here in cameras to start telling you we shall do this, we shall do this. We must have a good strategy. But as Parliament, we make laws, and as Parliament, we have institutions. By the our committees,
oversight.
And oversight. Our committees have powers of the High Court. So as we welcome. As we welcome that, and Brigadier Isoke gave us a very, very, very good insight, we are going to act because corruption affects all of us, irrespective of your political affiliations. We are tired. So we are going to make serious legislation on that. We are going to make sure our institutions that are involved in investigating and implementing, we shall do oversight.
The how?
We shall do.
How?
The how, I will not explain it here, but we shall do oversight as members of Parliament because that's one of our greatest roles. So just appreciate that, because some people are saying
we do appreciate
that we do not discuss it.
The
but
nation,
we have reflected.
Lastly, and as we wind this down, we could have this debate for the entire day, but the nation appreciates that Emyoga, that PDM are being rolled out. Implementation is going on. But the detail in the how and the what will happen if the pitfalls that have bedeviled some of these programs happen again is what people want to know. There's already aspects of people getting money they're not supposed to get. Others are getting half of what they are getting. And those are the questions people want answered.
I think as a journalist, I would interest you to start rolling down in the villages. Because like I told you of political activism, every program will not be humbly welcomed here. People start bashing. I had an argument with someone who was telling me, this program has failed. I told him at my age, if my wife died, will I stop getting married again? Because I'm still energetic and strong. I need to have more soga babies ahead. So we should not really look at it in the negative side. Okay. But the house, I explained practically, because this program, I know they have challenges. Yes. We have challenges, but we are trying to put them in line so that we can streamline. And also, as Parliament, we have serious. I know we still have an issue with the parish movement model policy, but we are coming to that, and we've had discussions onto that.
All right, gentlemen, time is up. This discussion, like I said just a few minutes ago, can go on for the entire day. We shall hope that during the week and in the days ahead, we shall have a chance to be able to talk more about it. Joseph Ochieno, political analyst and stalwart of the Uganda People's Congress, many thanks for making time today. Stay cool. And Alex, Brandon Kintu, the MP for Kagoma, many thanks for helping us understand the resolutions that were outed by the National Resistance Movement. We are hoping that we can see the detail as soon as possible. And of course, many thanks to you too. Jonathan Tabalanga, political analyst and scholar of politics. I'm waiting for that day when you become a professor. Chris Higenyi is my name. The Kickstarter is done. I hope that the conversations that we've had here have emboldened your understanding of the 24 resolutions that were outed by the National Resistance Movement. The detail can be found in the Daily Monitor. You can read about that, but most importantly, we shall be hoping that Mr. Brandon Kintu and the National Resistance Movement Secretariat come up with the detail of these resolutions for every Ugandan to read. I'll be waiting for that and perhaps share as time goes on. Priscilla, Regina Naloga will be coming up next. Stay with us.